you had a hard day, you could say something in a rough tone. The person on the other side receiving that tone is going to respond accordingly. We talk about the concept of using I language instead of you language. And it's an important communication tool. So if I say to you, you always do that, so right away you put up a defense mode. And if I change that type of a concept, and a lot of the people that talk about Shalom Bayit talk about these concepts because it makes a lot of sense, that, I'm bothered by something, not you.
Powerful.
And you take the change of the tone, changes the whole conversation. And if you take that type of a concept, you could really change marriages in a very positive way.
Baruchim Abayim, and welcome to Torah Talks Chazaq's program with special guests. We have with us Mr. Eli Goldbaum, all the way from Brooklyn. Shalom Aleichem. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. And we're going to be speaking about Shalom Bayit, Shalom divorce. Just do it peacefully. But before we get to the topic, if we get a little bit back about yourself,
sure,
and the great work you're involved with as well.
Thank you so much again for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here and try to share the message and try to do things peacefully. I think it's incredible for Klal Yisrael. So my background is I actually work in the healthcare field, and about 12 years ago, someone got in my head to try to work on a Haredi prenuptial agreement. And I started explaining to you a little later, just the concept. I started working with the Gedolim on it, never really expecting to get a haskama. And here we are a couple of years later, and it's amazing the haskamas we've gotten on that. And from that, I ended up doing people found out that I mediate divorces, and it's kept me quite busy, to say the least. And Baruch Hashem, more importantly, I have successfully stopped quite a number of divorces, and we got people to proper help and kept the Shalom Bayit in the house, and I think that's a bigger accomplishment. So I worked on a curriculum for marriage, for good marriages, to make good marriages, great marriages. So Baruch Hashem keeps me busy right now.
Baruch Hashem, Chazdei Hashem. So let's jump into it. There's a couple, and they're about to get married. What do you suggest for a couple to before they get into this marriage agreement? Any advice you could give to them?
So it's a great question. So it's not really me that's suggesting this. Like I said, I worked with the Gedolim, and I personally got a tremendous amount of Chazaq for the amount of time that these Gedolim have spent on this agreement, which if I could just give the website, you could actually download it. It's free downloads. We don't make any money on this. This is not a business venture. The name of the organization is Yashar Initiative, YASHAR, initiative.org. YasharInitiative.org. And everything is on that website. The actual agreement is on the website. It can be downloaded for free, like I said. The Askamas of all the Gedolim. Just quickly, I worked with Shlomo Miller on this for quite a number of years until he finally felt that it was an okay agreement halachically. He then sent me to Rav David, who has really taken a tremendous initiative to try to help us through the agreement and get it to the next level. Went after that to Rav Forsheimer in Lakewood, who also jumped on it right away. And again, like I said, all the Askamas are online. Thereafter, I was sent to Eretz Yisrael, and we decided to go after the biggest Paisik in Eretz Yisrael, Moshe Sternbach, who thankfully reads English and understands English, and went through this agreement. Did not give us an easy time, but Baruch Hashem, we got his Askama, glowing Askama, and then came back to America. We got from the Eli Goldbaum, the Sephardic community, Rabbi Atruel, has given me Askama. It's an interesting story, which maybe one day I'll give you. But the Gedolim are behind this agreement, and it really could make a big difference in keeping people's lives peacefully. I think the month point that I'd like to just bring out, Rav David, the first time I met him, said, I believe that this will actually save marriages. And if people understand what happens in divorce, which maybe we'll touch on later on, we'll realize that if you have a healthy place to go, before there's all this interaction of people in the community and whatnot getting involved, or the Rabbanim, other lay people, and you have a healthy place to go to discuss the issues and whatnot, and potentially get people to a healthy place before it gets ugly and dirty, which unfortunately happens in some cases, which we're working very hard to avoid. You actually could save marriages, and I think it's an important point that Rav David said, and I think it's certainly accurate, and I've seen it in my work.
So, could you explain to one that is not familiar with a prenup? It's a document. Could you elaborate a little bit?
Absolutely. So I think it's important to understand our prenuptial agreement was drafted as a totally it's really it's not one sided for the man, for the woman. It's more of a gender neutral agreement, and the concept really is, without going into the detail, is to get people to acknowledge before marriage that in case Khalila there would be an issue, we have an agreed upon bezdin that we're going to go to and deal with whatever it is that we have to deal with. One of the protocols of the agreement is Shalom Bayit should be number one.
To make peace in the home.
To make peace in the home, if it's attainable, but if not, like you mentioned before, I'm big into Shalom divorce as well. So if it's either Shalom of Bayit, and if it can't be, and there's
Shalom divorces should be done peacefully.
It's peacefully
without a world war.
That's correct. The damage that people don't understand, and it's incredibly painful. Going through a divorce is not only the couple, the family's going through a divorce, the parents, the grandparents, siblings.
I've seen communities.
Children. Absolutely.
100%. So a marriage happens, Baruch Hashem, the couple gets married, and they want to have Shalom Bayit. They want to have peace in the home. Any suggestions, any advice that you could give for a couple, whether it's a new couple or it's a couple that's been married for many years?
Absolutely. So, we're touching on what I ended up growing into. We had a Tisha B'Av program. I don't know, it was 4 or 5 years ago. It was a roundtable discussion. Myself, Ritzi Hiziger was the moderator,
of course,
and Rizvi Bell from That Good was on the panel. Moshe Meir Weiss and Rabbi Ben Sion Twersky, a therapist, Rav, was on the panel. And it came up in the discussion that there really is a need for good curriculum, some kind of good curriculum that could be helpful in the marriages. We're not talking about difficult marriages. We're talking about good marriages. Every good marriage, Baruch Hashem, I'm married for quite a number of years. I read through the curriculum myself, and I learned from it. And the concept is to take a good marriage and make it into a great marriage.
Make it better. 100%.
Make it no reason. Everyone could use it. I'm still learning. We're all learning, and we'll learn as long as we're alive and we're married and we're happily married. We could always learn something.
Every road you drive in, there's always going to be a bump in the road,
especially on the day that's snowing.
So in marriage as well, no matter how well what happens, there's always bumps and things do happen.
Correct. I think so. One of the things that we speak about, take the first year of marriage. Everyone realizes Shalom, but the first year of marriage is sometimes a little more challenging, only because you're two new people getting used to one another, and even in the best situations, it sometimes can be a little challenging to get to know a spouse and to get comfortable and familiar with a spouse. So if you're able to learn certain tools, and those tools could help you and make your marriage and your adjustment to marriage easier. And as you grow in the marriage with additional challenges, your children are growing older. Some children, we all know what the challenges of children. Some children do better in school, some do less well in school. You potentially have sibling rivalries. Sometimes parents, children, Shabbosim come up, and you go to your parents, and some of the nephews, nieces could potentially cause certain issues between you and your spouse because it's her children, your children, whatever the case may be. Her nephews, her nieces, that potentially they work together with your children, but not as well as you'd like to, and that causes friction and whatnot. So we actually came out with a curriculum. I worked, it sort of came to me right after that video. I was speaking to a therapist, her name is Lisa Twersky, who is a good friend of mine, and she literally came to me with a curriculum, like literally with a bow and tied and said, here's a curriculum. So we worked on that for quite some time. It's really her curriculum, but we put a lot of time and kochos into helping her make it into a good curriculum. It's actually, we put it out into a book. It wasn't the intention of it. The intention was to really come out with a curriculum that we're going to train Rabbanim with, the Chasadim teachers, college teachers, to give over this curriculum. It's still something we'd like to do. The challenge is people are busy, and it's hard to find time to go through the curriculum in a proper manner. But the book actually came out, I think, about 2-3 weeks ago. It's called Me and You, What I Wish I Knew. I know it is available in some of the farm stores. It's actually specifically to our community, to the Frum community. It's not a hashkafa book. It's simply taking some basic concepts, which we can maybe talk about, some of the basic concepts of what I'll give you some very simple example. The beginning of the book talks about the concept of getting to know yourself. Very often, in order to be a part of a marriage, I need to know myself so I could help my spouse help me. So, as an example, if I don't know what I want, I had a hard day's work, I come home and I use this as an example. Different people want to be treated differently. At the end of the day, I had a hard day. Do me a favor, leave me alone. Give me 15 minutes. Let me just get to myself. And I need the breather. There are other people who want their wife to dote over them or husband to dote over them and say, like, oh, Shafel, I feel so bad. You had a rough day, and be interactive. So if you don't know what you want, how's your spouse supposed to know? And very often we have this false notion. And certainly when we get engaged, I know I was there. I dated my wife, I think 8 or 9 times, and I felt, oh, we really know each other so well. And the reality is we really don't know each other. And certainly once we live with one another, we start realizing that we didn't really know each other. And we think that our spouses read our minds. And very often we ourselves don't know what we want. So even if our spouse read our mind, you wouldn't necessarily know what the spouse wants. But we would come
knowing yourself. That's
knowing
a very
yourself.
first,
That's
very
the first
important
thing.
point.
Right.
And then there's also the topic of communication. I've seen this many times where there's things that a certain spouse wants, but they don't know how to communicate it properly to the other side.
Thank you. Yes, that's communication is key to everything. How to communicate. Simple thing. Had a rough day. Wife comes home, she had a rough day. Not the time to talk about it. That doesn't mean we don't talk about it ever. We talk about it in 15 minutes, in an hour or 2 hours, when things cool down.
Calm down, right.
So when something is not going to be spoken in the right tone, then you could say something. We all do that. You had a hard day, you could say something in a rough tone. The person on the other side receiving that tone is going to respond accordingly. So one of the things I talk about often is the concept of not. I don't like to play defense. No one wants to play defense. So if someone says something, we talk about the concept of using I language instead of you language. And it's an important communication tool. So if I say to you, you always do that. So right away you put up a defense mode. And if I change that type of a concept, and a lot of the people that talk about Shalom Bayit talk about these concepts because it makes a lot of sense. That, I'm bothered by something, not you.
Powerful.
And you take the change of the tone, changes the whole conversation. And if you change the conversation, that's how you. I just on the way here, I was talking to somebody trying to help with Shalom Bayit, and just explained to him his wife just needs words of affirmation constantly. Just give her what she needs. Give her what he has a lot of tinnitus. I said the same thing that you're saying in a word of tinnitus. I showed him how he could go ahead and change the language to show it as an appreciation that his wife did something good. And if you take that type of a concept, you could really change marriages in a very positive way. Obviously, the book is quite voluminous. It's not a small book, but it has a lot of examples and whatnot, how you could really work through some of the things on your own. Some things you may want to write for yourself to even get to know yourself. Not necessarily you're ready to share it with the spouse at the time that you're writing it, and you may be willing to share it, depending on where you're holding your marriage. Sometimes in the early part of marriage, you're not comfortable with something, and over time, you'd be more comfortable, and maybe you speak to a Rav or not necessarily a therapist, even someone who's a coach. It could be a lesson teacher, college teacher in the early part of marriage. But, these are things that are important. It's very important, and, we really feel in today's society specifically, we are in a very high tense society. The world is moving very quickly.
Very quickly.
How many both spouses have to work to earn a living? Today, there was recently a podcast I saw. Someone was talking about the yeshiva tuition crisis. And you're basically saying that in order for people of any size family to survive, you need to make hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's not really doable in most families unless you have two spouses that are working, and that just adds to the trauma and the difficulty of making a good Shalom Bayit and spending time. I personally, it's not so easy. It didn't happen in my early years, but I try to have a date night once a week with my wife. Go out, it doesn't have to be to who knows where, but we go out to eat supper one night a week, and just it doesn't have to be the most expensive restaurant. I was actually talking to someone very involved in the therapy world. Said I went out to eat. They spent $200 on the dinner. My wife said to me, "I don't understand. You spent so much money on the supper." He goes, an hour of therapy is way more expensive. I'd rather do this, So
That is hilarious.
yeah.
That is hilarious. But it's very, very, very important. I know many couples that took this upon themselves, and their whole Shalom Bayit has changed forever because there was a lack of communication, a lack of time spent together, and it's always busy at home, and things are always happening. So it's very important to go out.
Quality time.
Quality time is very important, and not texting and on the phone and being
That's
busy.
another story. Yes, so maybe we'll talk about that in a second.
But unfortunately, there are cases where Shalom Bayis, they try this, that, and everything, and it just doesn't work. And
just what you said, texting, I think is important. You said communication.
Yeah.
Communication means you give undivided attention.
Right.
If I'm sitting and talking to you and you're busy texting on the phone while I'm talking to you, that's not undivided attention. See, I'm communicating. I heard what you said. I don't know. I know when someone's talking to me, if I was taking out the phone, it became normal in our society. I was listening to actually someone who is not from talking about you go to a meeting, and it used to be that before a meeting you sat around, you spoke to one another, and you gained the ability to learn communication.
Right.
And proper communication. Today, if you walk into a lot of these meetings, no one's talking before a meeting. They're all on their phones. Yeah. And the second we start the meeting, we start talking to one another.
Even during the meetings.
Correct. And it's so, it became something that, in a sense, we feel is okay and it's proper, but really is not. It's really, it's really against everything that makes any sense. It's not respectful. It's not nice. So if we could learn that art, I think it certainly would help in communication and marriage and whatnot as well.
100%. So I was saying before about it, a person tries everything, and unfortunately it's not working out. Klali, so you have Masechet Gittin, a whole tractate about divorce.
Yeah.
And as the topic was Shalom Bayit, Shalom divorce, just do it peacefully. You've been involved with this. What do you suggest for a couple that unfortunately is going through the difficult time period of separating and divorcing?
Yeah, it's a very painful and fully loaded question, to say the least.
Yeah, an uncomfortable question, but
it's unfortunately relevant. I think it's beyond that. I think it's also what is the role of people in the community, what's the role of family and whatnot in that state. I think that being supportive, just as a community, we should be supportive to people, but we have to be careful. I talk about this concept of TMI, too much information. People I think we all are privy to certain information on, but perhaps if we know someone going through a divorce, and people come to us with a lot of information. And sometimes when people give information or too much information, it's indicative of a very different story, not necessarily getting the whole picture. I think it's incredibly important that people who are going through the divorces to understand that it's a very difficult challenge that they're going through. They need people to have divorces, support, They need the support and everything else, but at the same time, it really should be dealt with in a manner that doesn't increase the fighting.
Right.
If I get people to me in the early stages, and Baruch Hashem, a lot of late, my name has gotten out there. I guess I charge a lot of money. I don't charge for my time. Mm-hmm. So Baruch Hashem, I've had a tremendous amount of success in this area. But to work with people and understand that, a simple thing. One of the things that attorneys will typically advise, and I actually got some criticism for saying this, but I'll say it again anyway. They'll advise to go ahead and to put in a restraining order. And sometimes a restraining order is necessary. But I tell people, if let's say you believe that restraining order is going to cost you X amount of months or years till you're going to finish your divorce. Because ultimately, it's not a geschmack thing to have a restraining order put against somebody. And the person is going to potentially cause you to pay for it, as a lack of a better term. And if you think about that and say, what, let me weigh the pros and cons of this restraining order. Now, I'm not talking about a case where there's a real need for it, but there is a tactic. And again, I'll be clear on that. It's not where there's a need for it, of course, you have to do what you have to do, but very often it's a tactic that's used in certain cases. And it's a geschmack feeling. Maybe the first minute you got a restraining order, and the spouse is potentially not getting to see the children or whatever the case is, child custody and stuff like that, and you end up paying for it in the long run. And it's not only in this particular this point of the divorce, but in the bigger picture as well. If we're able to keep cases from getting to be the next World War, And I work hours and hours to keep people calm and realize that there's a method to my madness, and that is to stay cool, stay calm, and to just be mavata, which means to just give in on certain things in the initial stage for the broader picture. I believe, and I've showed it to people time and again, I had to get that was done last Thursday, and it's exactly what I told the guy when he called me. After he finished, he thanked me for getting it done, and the person was helping out. It was a sister-in-law. I said, I want you to become my advocate to help me in other cases. That you told me it's not going to work. My case is different, and we have to be tough, and we have to be tough, and we have to be tough. And I said, I promise you that the quickest way to get from point A to point Z, which is where you got to get to, which is the divorce, is by going ahead and giving in on certain things and not making a big deal on certain things, even though it's painful. And he said, I will be your advocate. Anyone you have a problem with this. And I'm saying he wasn't an easy case in the sense that he really didn't feel that I was giving them the proper advice. He felt that certain things we have to push back and fight back. I find that it's the oxygen of a lot of the cases. The fighting and whatnot is the oxygen of the divorces. And if we're able to do this in a peaceful manner, and that's really the concept of the prenup, and that's where I got it from, the prenuptial agreement basically gets us to a healthy place. It gets us to a place to deal with it before we have all the other people on the outside that potentially will give their advice. One of the things I talk, it's a very painful thing, but it's a reality. There's so many cases I deal with that it could be Rabbanim, lay people, or whatever it is that get involved on a case. And there's nothing wrong with me giving someone advice on something. But my advice is only as good as what I've heard. If I didn't hear from two sides, I'm giving a one-sided advice. And I can give people story after story of cases that when I present side one, it sounds like this is no question, this is the way the case got to go. Several cases that I've saved in Shalom Bayit have come to me like that. When they presented the facts, everyone was saying, divorce, divorce, divorce. And then I heard the second side, and I got a totally different perspective. And you get the other side and the other perspective, and you start realizing there's two perspectives here. I don't even like to call them sides. And if we're able to go ahead and mesh those perspectives, very often, A, we could potentially have a Shalom Bayit. B, if we certainly can have a Shalom divorce. And it's just a matter of understanding that as painful as this is, and I can't begin to tell you how many times sitting in mediation, people don't even begin to understand there is another side. They only see their side. They see their picture. It's an emotional thing. And if we're able to cut out the emotion for 1 second and think for 1 second, I do this with couples all the time. I say, I understand it's difficult because you're living in your reality. But if I'm able to go ahead and just try, put yourself into the other person's perspective, try to understand where they're coming from. And I've seen so many cases end peacefully because of that. And that's really my goal. And I think ultimately, and probably most of the work that I do, as much as I try to help the couples and get them through it, I see the devastation to children. I hear this all the time. People come to me, I'm doing this for my children, I'm doing this for my children. It is so painful to see how the children are getting destroyed. You're not doing this for your children. I understand sometimes you don't have a choice. And I think it's important to understand that and recognize that there are difficult cases out there. There are difficult personalities, there are personality disorders. But in a lot of the cases, things could be avoided. And the kids suffer. The kids suffer terribly through it. And it's something we have to stop as Klal Yisrael. I talk about this concept. We have enough people that hate us. We don't have to hate one another. We have to work together. The community, I think, it could be supportive. But really, if you're not involved with the case, why are we taking positions in someone else's divorce? It's between that couple. Why is every case becoming a whole community issue? Let's keep it as simple and as peaceful as possible. And I think that message could really reverberate in our community and try to get people to understand. There's professionals out there with the people that understand, keep the cool, not get the fighting out there. I think that's what Hashem wants from us. To just do things peacefully, do things with shalom.
100%. There was an individual that got divorced. And it wasn't, unfortunately, like it is sometimes, it wasn't peacefully done. And after many years, he was, thinking it over. He told me, he's like, I just wish it would have just been, better for the kids and for the families, this and that. I always tell people that shalom comes from the word shalem. Peace comes from the word of complete. And machloket comes from the word chelik, which is a portion. whenever there's only a portion of the story, one-sided,
100%.
that's where there's
I love that.
machlokus.
Beautiful.
And when there's shalem, when the picture's full, then there's shalom bayit. And again, like Rabbi Eli Goldbaum tells us beautifully, shalom bayit, shalom divorce, let's do it peacefully. And we have a minhag, we have a custom on Torah Talks, which is a final message for our broad audience.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I'd like to just focus on something I've been talking about recently. People ask me all the time, why our community has more divorce today?
There's a lot of divorces.
There's definitely,
going on.
I think everyone.
It's not just our community.
Yeah, it's the world.
It's
the world. Yeah. So it's a tough challenge. I have a whole list of reasons that there are. Whether it's more divorces percentage-wise, there's too much divorce going on. So there's one thing that I've keyed in on, not necessarily the only reason, certainly not the only reason, but I think as a balabas, I think I could talk because I actually have the challenge. I have a smartphone in a sense, and I think it's something that we have to acknowledge that our generation is dealing with this. I spoke recently at a Shalom Bayit speech that I speak quite often. I spoke about a concept that I think is an important concept. I was reading an secular book about the anxiety and depression of this generation. The Goyish world, the non-Jewish world, is waking up that the anxiety and depression is coming about from people, kids watching all kinds of things on devices. And I think that anyone who doesn't realize this is just in denial. We all realize this is a challenge, but it's a good babysitter. And that's why we use it. So this particular book started off with a incredible story of a kid who comes home and tells his father, mother, guess what? I had this billionaire came to school and they were offering a trip to Mars. And I won a trip to Mars. This billionaire came and explained to us, we're going to take these children and set them to Mars. We're not going to know how they're going to acclimate to Mars, so we want to see how they'll acclimate to Mars. We want to see if they're even able to come back to Earth and acclimate properly to Earth. Is the body going to grow properly, etc.? And this kid says, me, my friends, we want a trip to Mars. And not only that, you signed as parents, you already signed consent.
The consent form.
So he starts the concept, like we would ask this to anybody. I don't know, any sane person who would go ahead and send their children off to Mars as an experiment. But at the same time, what he was trying to say is that's really what's happening with cell phones. And what cell phones were is a bunch of billionaires, as you could look online and find out that, Facebook and whoever else, I don't know, all these different companies who are all billionaires and all there for money were brought to Congress a number of years ago to explain why it is that their devices and whatever their apps are not causing this type of damage to the world. And the world's starting to figure out that's what's happening. But it's back to our story. So these billionaires basically took us all and made us this example. And our children, ourselves, we're going into this world of space, and we're going into Mars, and we're taking our lives, getting taken over by these type of apps and whatnot, and it's going up. We don't know how we're going to come back. Are my kids going to come back? My children that are married, are they going to come back? That they're going to be able to acclimate back into society or not, and whatnot. If you take the concept that he spoke about, I think it's really what we're dealing with today, and I think it's something that if we're serious about this, I said at that time, I said, we talk about cigarette smoking. We all know that cigarettes are dangerous. Are there people who smoke? Yes, there are people who smoke. But most people who are smart, healthy people realize cigarettes are dangerous. There's even a warning on the box of cigarettes. So you say, so we realize that it's a danger. Drinking. We don't let kids drink until they're 21 or whatever the case may be. The legal age. Do kids drink before? Yes, but that's another issue and a major problem of Shalom Bayit as well. But, the same thing with gambling. There's responsibility and whatnot. So I think that if people were honest with themselves and realize that these are things that are very dangerous to life. So to go ahead and tell you don't have a phone, it's a little different because I can live without a cigarette, I can live without drinking, I can live without gambling, and Baruch Hashem I do. My phone, I need my phone. So, in a sense, we make it into something that's kosher. But if we really believe deep down that this is a cancer, that this is really dangerous. This is destroying marriages. It's destroying relationships. It's destroying children. It's destroying all kinds of things. And I just want to touch on another thing that I've seen constantly. I ask this to Rabbanim all the time: is who's giving hashkafa to our generation? It's not necessarily the Gedolim and the Rabbanim. I know we're doing a great thing here. I would like to give the proper hashkafa, but I get the clips. When I deal with people in divorce, they're always sending me these clips that they saw online of this person saying this and this chachma and whatnot. This is the people giving our children the hashkafas. And there's influences, and Baruch Hashem, I don't even know what I'm talking about because I'm not involved with that world. But that's who's giving hashkafa to this generation.
Danger of social media, 100%.
Terrible. And I've seen it without a question. And again, it's way broader than just social media. But with social media comes about the depression, the anxiety, the addictions, etc. And there's a lot to talk about on that topic. So I think if I was to take this and to take everything we just spoke about, and again, I thank you for having me here.
100%. It was an amazing Torah talk and very informative and very, very, very important.
Yes, I
Right?
appreciate it.
Alavai, if every person knows 2 other people that are going through, a difficult situation, whatever it may be, they should hear Eli Goldbaum's important message. Shalom Bayit, Shalom Divorce. Just do it peacefully.
Correct.
We want to thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And very, very important messages.
Thank you so much.
And we want to thank everyone. 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Tuesday nights, Chazaq Torah Talks with special guests. Chazaq.org/live, CHAZAQ.org/live. Special thank you to the various different platforms that host Chazaq Torah Talks with us. Shout out to our friends at Torah Anytime. Also, a special thank you and shout out to our friends at Daily Giving. $1 a day really goes a very, very far away. DailyGiving.org. We encourage everyone to check that out as well. And Baruch Hashem, the feedback has been amazing, phenomenal, and great. We encourage people to continue, please, sending in the feedback. Future suggested guests for the Chazaq Torah Talks are welcome as well. And we have our massive, huge Chazaq campaign coming up. Please, everybody get involved with that as well. Baruch Hashem, over 1,800 kids from public schools to yeshivot. Just the last few years alone, plus thousands more kids after school programs, Sunday school programs, about 20 different locations, Teens Vision programs and initiatives, a youth center, a lot of amazing things. And it's just the beginning, so we want to do a lot more. Please reach out to get involved. And once again, thank you to Mr. Eli Goldbaum for joining us. And shout out to Nathan Behar behind the camera. We should all be zocheh to have Shalom Bayit. And we should hear B'sarot Tovot. We should hear good news. And we should be zocheh to have the Geulah Shlema, the complete redemption. To come be Meher B'Amen. Amen.
Amen.